Good evening. My name is Susan Copeland, and I'm the math facilitator here at Washam Elementary School. And this is Rebekah Lonon. She's a third grade teacher. She's a third grade math teacher here at Washam. And we're going to be presenting tonight about why math is so different and how it's changed to kind of give you a little bit of support as you're trying to help your child at home. We know it's gotten to be a little bit more challenging because how kids are doing things today are a little bit different from how we did when we were growing up. Researchers tell us that if I were to ask you to raise your hand, or ask a room full of adults to raise their hand if they don't like math, or if they feel like they're not good at math, 70% of the adults in the room would raise their hand. I thought it was interesting that we have a lot of dads here tonight rather than moms. And I can hear the conversations back at the house where your wife may have said, hey, I'm going to send you because you're the one that's good at math. That may have happened at your house. A conversation, something like that. And that seems to happen a lot just because a lot of adults don't feel confident in math. If we were to decide that we were going to take this group and go over to Cracker Barrel to have dinner, since we planned this at dinner time. We should have had it at Cracker Barrel, right? If we were to take this whole group and we were to go over there and we were to ask, or we were to get our menus, and I were to lean over to someone and say, hey, could you help me read this menu? You all would be texting each other, did you hear that? She can't even read the menu. You would be shocked. But then, if a little while later, we got the bill, and I said, hey, can somebody help me figure out how much of a tip? You all would be like, oh, here's the cheat sheet, here's the calculator. You would be jumping right in to help me because it's okay in our society or in our culture to struggle with math. In some ways, it's even cool. A lot of you, if you happen to be the one that's good at math, or one of the few that's good at math, people probably may have even teased you and called you a nerd, or like act shocked if you could figure out something quickly, or they may come to you because it's different rather than the norm for a lot of adults to be good at math. So, what was so different about math for us when we were growing up? We all worked alone. We were usually given a sheet of problems, all the same kind, and we had to work through and use some kind of process or some set of steps and solve every single problem on the page the same way, except for those word problems that we all hated down at the bottom. And then we frequently had to rehearse those steps in front of the teacher so the teacher could correct us if we were missing part of the process. So this is the type of instruction that many of us went through that have left us struggling, many adults struggling today. Not necessarily all of us here, but okay. The Association for Supervision and Curriculum and Development, one of the leading curriculum organizations for principals and curriculum specialists, publicized a few years ago that even our best schools are failing to prepare children for the 21st century. And so what does that mean? I'm going to show you a short video clip.
There has never been a bigger force for change than technology. It changes absolutely everything about the way we live, the way we get around, the way we eat, even the way we talk to each other.
So you can see that there's constant change. Things are changing very, very, very quickly for what our children need. We're having to, I thought the most interesting lines in here is when it said, we're preparing children for jobs that don't exist, using technologies that haven't been invented to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. What is it that CEOs of probably around 100 different companies, major companies, when they were asked, what is it that you need in your in upcoming employees for your company? What is it that you're looking for? They're looking for people who can think, people who can ask questions, people who can who are innovative. So not that just follow a series of steps. Remember all of those math questions that we did, where we had to follow step by step by step? A computer can do that now. So if that's the only thing that we prepare our children to do, they're not going to be prepared for the kind of careers that they're going to have in their future. So that's a lot of the reason for the change, so that they are able to do the things that they're going to have to be able to do in their future jobs. So what is it that we are doing differently? We are doing something differently now, and I'm sure that you've noticed that in the types of work that comes home with your child. One of the most important things that I would say that we do that's different now is we're making sure that children understand the math that they do. When most of us went to school, it didn't matter. I have some friends that even talk about a phrase that they heard about dividing fractions. It was don't ask why, just invert and multiply. We didn't have to know why things worked or how they worked. We just had to follow those steps. And so what we're trying to do now in all of the work that we're doing, and it's kind of my mantra in grade level planning with teachers, what are we doing to help build students' understanding of the work? And so that is probably, to me, the most major shift of what we're doing. And it makes it seem like some of the math work that we're doing is really strange or complicated, but it's because we're trying to build meaning. And I'm going to hold on that one for a minute because I'm going to give you a specific example of that in just a few minutes. Another thing that's changed in how we teach math is that we're trying to build fluency. Fluency has three components. One of the components of fluency is accuracy. We do want kids to get the right answer. There's a lot of people out there that are saying with Common Core or the way we're doing math now that the right answer is not important. That's a myth. We do care that kids get the right answer, and that's actually a starting point for us. We want them to get the right answer and then talk about it. The second piece of fluency is flexibility, and we want children to be able to solve problems in more than one way. We want them to have multiple strategies so that they might use one approach this time and another approach next time. And that last piece of fluency is efficiency. And that kind of ties those other two together. We want kids to work towards efficiency, and that means knowing several different strategies and then being able, as they get older, to think about which one is the best strategy and picking that way to solve the problem. So those three pieces, accuracy, flexibility, and efficiency, are what we're trying to do with fluency. The last one is communication. And one of the things that a lot of the CEOs of companies said is they really need for employees to be able to communicate their thinking. So a lot of what we're having children do in math is communicate their strategies with each other. So they have to not only speak it, but they also have to hear strategies from other students. And that's a challenge for a lot of them to be able to explain their thinking and to be able to tell someone else how they solve the problem. Okay, so I don't know if there's any doctors or nurses in the crowd here, but if there is, you probably have people who come up to you and ask you medical questions. If there's a lawyer in the crowd, you probably have people that come and ask you questions about law. Well, as a teacher, a lot of times my friends will ask me things, they'll be like, what is this crazy math you have kids doing? And a lot of people will ask me different things, or friends might ask me specific things about their child. A few years ago, I had a friend that was so excited. It was her oldest child's first year in school. She was in kindergarten, and she brought me a whole stack of papers that she had done in kindergarten. And I looked at the first one on the top, and it looked something like this. So it was a sheet of paper, and it said place value at the top. And there were about 18 problems, and this is a fake name. This isn't the actual child. I made a replica of this sheet. So we'll call her Kaylee, though. And Kaylee had solved all of these problems and had made an 87% on her paper. I'm in kindergarten on this place value sheet, and had a smiley face on it. And I looked at it for a second at this mom, and then back at my friend, this mom that had the stack of papers, so proud of the work that her 5-year-old was doing in kindergarten, and my heart broke. Because when I looked at this, I knew what I had to tell her mom, who was my friend. As soon as I looked at this, I told her mom that looking at this, I would give Kaylee an 87% on her ability to fill out this worksheet. But I would give her a 0% on her understanding of place value. When I looked at, you see, place value is about knowing that the left digit in a 2-digit number is groups of 10. So if you were to look at this first number, 23, understanding that the 2 means there's 2 groups of 10, and the 3 is that there's 3 left over. Well, so when I looked at this and looked at what Kaylee missed, even though she made an 87, every time there was a single-digit number, she had missed it. Which meant she had learned that when I see a 2-digit number and there's 2 blanks, I put the left digit in the left blank and the right digit in the right blank. And she had no idea what to do when there was only 1 digit. So there were 2 ways, and actually I have to admit, when I first started teaching, I would have done this because it was the way I was taught. I would have 2 general ways that you could handle this. The first way would be to be like, oh no, Kaylee, sweetheart, what you need to do is when there's 1 digit, you leave the first one blank and you put the 9 in the second blank. So if there's only 1 digit, you put the 9 in the second blank. And if we did that, Kaylee would probably be able to make 100 on this worksheet, and she would still not understand place value. And actually it would be a worse situation to me, because her understanding of place value would be masked. And we wouldn't be able to see it as well as we could right here. That's not what I recommended to her mom. I told her mom to throw away that worksheet and to go home and get a handful of beans or beads. Have Kaylee stick her hand in, grab a set out, make groups of 10, and tell how many groups of 10 she had, and then how many were left over, and then count them all together. So Kaylee would stick her hand in, get out 32 beans. She would make 3 groups of 10, have 2 left over, and then count them all 32, and say there's 32. And then she would do it again. I said, put them back. Now she grabbed out another handful, there's 45. She counted 45, and then she made groups of 10. There were 4 groups of 10 and 5 left over. And I told her mom, keep doing that until you've had Kaylee make the groups of 10, and she makes 6 groups of 10 and 3 ones, and you say, now count them all together, and she's like, it's 63, because she realizes the pattern or the connection that left digit is the groups of 10 and the right digit is the ones left over. That way is going to take a lot longer than just saying, Kaylee, leave the first blank open and put in the second. But the second way is going to make sure that Kaylee understands what place value is and what those numbers actually represent. So what math is about is not about getting answers. That's kind of how it was when we were growing up. It was just about having a worksheet and being able to get the answer to a bunch of problems. True mathematics is looking for patterns in numbers, looking for relationships in numbers, making general statements, and eventually proving those statements in math. So that is what mathematics is about, and that's what we're trying to get kids to move towards, rather than just answering a bunch of different problems. So how is understanding built? Ms. Lonon is going to talk to you about the addition-subtraction sheet in the handouts that I gave you.
Can you just show me, if you're a K2 parent, can you raise your hand? If you're a 3-5 parent, can you raise your hand? Both? Yeah, we know you. So it kind of just gives me an idea. So basically, Susan and I had talked several years ago about how do we pick a child where they are now and move them along. So in reading, it seems you can find these ways, and you have strategies for scaffolding them to where they need to be. But in math, it's almost like they're not getting it. And that's almost like the only response. Like, they don't get this, or they don't get that. But then how do you strengthen them? How do you get them where they need to be? So the wealth of knowledge that Susan is, I said, well, where do I go? So I'm at So the sheet looks like this. It says K2 addition progression. And at the top, it talks, a little bitty paragraph, it talks about 3 major things, and these are the things that Susan has already highlighted. That our students need to have fluency with the facts that they're doing, and we call it like automatic. They just need to know them. Part of that comes with manipulating them and building them and working, like she said, with the beans, not just memorizing. So it's kind of a conglomerate of those. But we need them to be flexible in their thinking, and again, like she's referred to, that doesn't mean that 2 plus 2 is no longer 4. That just means that there are other ways to make 4. So you can make it 2 plus 2, you can make it 1 and 3, you can make it 0 and 4, so that they've got this wealth to pull on. And then it goes on to say that we want them to be efficient. So I know if you are a K1, especially parent, you saw stage 1 right here in the picture, all those circles. Has anyone experienced all those circles in their homework? They're drawing them all out, and they'll put them all together, and then they go back and count them all, or they mark them away. And it kind of gets messy, and it's time-consuming, but that's how they're building their foundation. But then as they go on, you'll see like the next stage, they hold that 12 in their head, and then they count on. Kind of like hold the bigger number in your head and count on, but it's so much more efficient than what they were previously doing. And then the next step would be that we introduce them to tools, like the number line. That helps them to mentally see what they're doing. And it comes in handy later, now that I've been from 2nd to 3rd, and I see that number line helps them in the next stage. In stage 4, they start to make larger jumps on that number line. So instead of jumping one number at a time, they picture, well, I can do 12 plus 8 because I know 2 plus 8 is 10, so 12 plus 8 is 20. It's all these connections that help them to think on their feet, and it helps them to relate other numbers and those same patterns to other numbers. But they do that in their head because they're used to making these individual jumps on the number line. Myself as a learner, I did not learn this way, and I've started, because of the little ones, I've started doing this myself because it helps me to get to the next landmark number. You know, we always said 10 is a friendly number, but it helps me get to the next group of 10 and so on. Now in 3rd grade, when we're in 3-digit numbers, we would do the same thing. 312 plus 8 gets me to 320. So you can use these same ideas with larger numbers. And like Susan said, we'll have another document for you before long that would have those too. And then on down below, so stage 4 basically gives you multiple ways that you could solve a problem. It's actually funny. Today I was telling the kids, I was like, math night tonight, write in your agendas, don't forget to tell your parents. And one little guy was standing, he's like, can we come? I said, well, no, you know everything we're going to tell them. This is to help your parents understand what you're saying. And it's funny because I would ask the kids, like, raise your hand if your parents don't think you know what you're talking about. And all the hands go up. And I'm like, well, so you come to school and I'm interpreting what you're saying, and then I try to help your parents. And then, it's kind of this conversation both ways. So The point is that we want to support you and give you what you need, so that when you see kind of gibberish and drawings and stuff, you can see that their understanding is growing and they're on that path to mastery of these skills. But sometimes it just looks a little different than the way we saw it. But if you notice, like down here in these bottom four, there's a note at the bottom that says choosing a strategy that is most efficient, and eventually it needs to be accurate. So if the strategy, if they consistently are not accurate with it, then we need to go back and refine what they're doing. But these bottom four here, you can see that, like in part B, they're breaking the number 9 into 8 and 1. But it's because they know the stacks of 10 that they drilled in K2. So they know 2 plus 8 is 10, so 12 plus 8 is 20. And they just latch onto that because it gets them, like that number line did, back to the nearest landmark. Or they may, down in part C, they may break 12 up to get that 10 out of it, and then add the 2 to the 9. Or in part D, they may see 12 and 9, and they know 9 needs 1 more to become another 10. So again, naturally, I didn't follow this progression, and I would take work home from the kids, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I take it and I show my husband, oh, look what this kid did. He's like, I do that every day in my head. Well, I never realized that I could have the freedom to manipulate numbers like that I would have been so much more efficient had I been able to. So I learned a lot from walking this road with them. And then on the back is subtraction. So there's always another side of math. But you can follow the same thing. And so the goal is that they're flexible, that they have multiple ways to attack a problem, that they are accurate. We can't have them just getting random answers and hoping that that's okay. And then that they're efficient. So we want them to get there, but then another thing is that we want them to have an alternate way to prove that they're right. We always say prove it in class because no one's going to believe you if you can't back it up with proof. Other handouts in your packet, just if you want to glance at them, there's, if you have someone in multiplication going through that right now, there's a packet here, and Susan has done an incredible job. It's I've actually learned it a lot. It's a cheat sheet that I keep in my teacher bag when I'm teaching. And it walks you through the grade level. So you can see, like with multiplication, it actually starts in kindergarten. They're laying that foundation. And it goes all the way through the grade levels. But then there are pictures to help you see ways that kids could solve those. Again, when you're looking at homework and you see a problem addressed, and you're like, well, this is the way I would solve it. No, that's not the way my teacher said. I can't do that. And we're not the end all and be all, but I think some of them think if we don't say it, it doesn't happen. So this would give you, it's kind of a cheat sheet for you. It's how we kind of talk about it. And the same with fractions and decimals. And Susan will show you later, you can access these electronically. And the really awesome thing is she spent a whole lot of time putting these in color for you. I shared the fractions with the third graders today, and it was so neat that they could see how each piece was fitting together, and it was just the coloration and everything just helped it kind of come to life for them as well. So these are very great resources. If you have any questions, we're definitely happy to help you through it. But hopefully these are your cheat sheets that you can keep and pull them out when you're sitting next to them and helping out with homework and stuff.
So you may be kind of understanding why in the world we're doing things differently from how you learned when you were in school right now. And it may be making some sense to you, but you still may be wondering how to help. And so these sheets are one way that we're trying to help you, to help them. Somebody told me when I was just talking a little while ago that they've learned to just YouTube strategies and they're there, or to Google them and you can find them. But one thing I do want to encourage you to do, if you're trying to help, the first thing that I would love for you to do, and your teachers would love for you to do, is to ask your child to explain what they're doing. Remember, one of the things that we're looking for is for children to be able to explain their thinking. And so asking them first to tell you about what they're doing, and just listening, and maybe that will help you kind of figure out what it is that they're doing and how they're solving the problem. The funny thing is I've had some, especially in the past few years, had teachers come and tell me, I have this student, they get the right answer every time, but I don't know what they're doing, So sometimes they invent these strategies that are making complete sense and work, and it's hard to figure out. So even teachers struggle with that every now and then when students develop something like that. So don't feel bad, and that leads me to say too, if you still don't understand, ask your child's teacher. They're more than willing to help you understand what it is. If there's a strategy that you just can't understand or something that they're doing, I'm sure they will be more than happy to help you try to figure that out. I know a few teachers have even made some different recordings and sent those home to help if students were, if parents were having questions, especially in 5th grade, I think. And the next thing is on, there was a business card that if you picked that up when you went in, on the back side of that there's a QR code that you can scan or a website. They go to the same place, and both of those go to our school math website. And this math website has a lot of resources for you. One of the things that you can see where it says curriculum, it will take you to the standards. So if you go in that, they're alphabetical, but by grade level, you can see, you can click on and see what the Common Core standards, those are the standards that are adopted in North Carolina right now, although there's going to be a change with that. But the Common Core standards are the standards. So if you want to see what is it that my child has to learn to do this year, you can see a short version of the standards right there. Okay. If you go back to the section called Strategies for Addition and Subtraction, in that section, it's divided by addition, division, fractions. These documents, so see where you say fractions continuum? That's the document that you have in your hand right now, only it's in color. So it makes it a little bit easier to see in color if you want to go to that and be able to see what it is that children have to understand. It's by grade level. I would encourage you to not only look at your child's grade level, but the grade levels before. So to see, sometimes if they're struggling and you're trying to support them with something they're struggling with, you might just be trying to figure out what they're doing. But if they're struggling and you're trying to figure out how to help them, sometimes it will help you to go back and look at the grade levels before to see what it is that they maybe missed in one of those grade levels and understanding that they might have missed that would help. So these documents are on there, and as soon as the division one is done, and as soon as the addition subtraction one, it'll be addition and subtraction, are updated, they'll be on here too. So you'll be able to access those. There are some short video clips on here too.
We're going to add 2 fractions with an unlike denominator.
Okay. So the next, anyway, and then there's some PowerPoints in here that have voice behind them. So there's just different resources if you click through and you're trying to figure something out that should be able to help you in there. The CMS Pacing Guide section, if you click on those, it will take you to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools pacing. We generally follow that, but not exactly. So, for example, I know right now that 2nd grade skipping fractions, and they're going straight to Unit 8, and they're going to come back to fractions, even though they're in that order. So, this CMS Pacing Guide is not I would talk to your child's teacher before I would follow this for sure, but we do generally follow the CMS pacing. And you can click on any one of these, like if you were to click on that section, and there's more information, including assessment, digital resources. Sometimes there's computer games there that relate to a topic that they're learning about. So there's all kinds of information as you click through that you can find on the CMS site too. All right, and then the last site, or the last part on here, is the resources and links, favorite links. So this will take you, one place you may be interested in going to is the North Carolina Department of Instruction. And that one kind of looks the same way. You can choose your child's grade level. You want to choose 4th grade maybe? And under 4th grade, you can see there's the standards. There is another document that's kind of like this document that I just gave you with lots more detail on it that has a lot of technical words called the unpacking document. So you can see the standard is over on the left, and then information about what it means is on the right. So that could be a resource for you. Teachers use this a lot, this unpacking document. but it is a little bit wordy. So that's part of why I tried to make the continuum for you, so that it was a little bit easier to understand. But if you want a little bit more clarification, it's a good place to go. Another thing, especially if you have, actually really any grade level has this, but if you're interested in assessment, there's a box that says assessment, and you can see there's the released EOG. So if you want to see what an EOG might look like for your 3rd, 4th, or 5th grader, you can go to the release section, scroll down, and when you come down to the bottom, you can see like it'll have mathematics grade 3, and you can click on that and see an example of what a release test might look like, if you want to see kind of what questions could be. There's also other places in there where it says tasks under assessment, so you could pick some of those right there. And you can find specific, and over on the left where it says 3rd or 4th grade, whichever one you want. And then it has by standards. Like, so if you knew your child was struggling, if your teacher said that your child's struggling with 3 NBT1, you could click on 3 NBT1 and go to tasks about that you could use for practice at home if you wanted to. They have those for every grade level, including kindergarten. There are tasks all the way through if you're trying to figure out things that you would like to do to help your child at home in addition. Okay? All right, and if you go back to the website, and you can explore other things in there, but I think those are probably the most interesting. Down at the bottom, there's information about Dreambox. If you're not familiar with Dreambox, it's our district has paid for Dreambox for every child. It's been studied by Harvard University and is shown to adapt to exactly where, like, if children have gaps in their learning, it finds them and helps them close those gaps. So if your child's not using Dreambox at home, I would strongly encourage you to make sure that you know their passwords and that they're able to log in. The lower grades have a picture password, so they have to pick their name and a picture. That's for K2. For 3-5, it's generally their username is their student ID, which you probably have, and it may be a lot of students students use the word math as their password. But if that doesn't work, you can email me, which you have my email on that card, or you can email your child's teacher and just tell me your child's name and I'll get you the password if what you have doesn't work. Yes, ma'am?
When does this Dreambox expire? Is it throughout the summer when the kids have it?
It should be throughout the summer. Yeah, they do some really wonky things when it comes close to when the year starts and it gets hard to find the class. Like they take all the names out because kids are moving from one class to another. And there's a little period of time where you can't access it because it's not attached to PowerSchool anymore and the names come out. So, but in general, you will still be able to use this over the summer, Dreambox. And I'm going to do a plug. Y'all can tell the literacy facilitator I did this. Compass Learning is the reading version of this, and so it's as much as possible if you have your children on Compass Learning and Dreambox at home. They adapt to where your child is academically and will help them at the point that they are. So LearnZillion is also another, you don't have to go all the way there, but LearnZillion is another one, or is another website. You have to sign up for a free account at first, but it's free, you don't have to pay anything, and then you can search in LearnZillion. Like you could say, like if your child brought home a paper that said multiplying decimals with arrays, you type that in, multiplying decimals with arrays, and little lessons will come up that will help explain that to you. And they're paying people lots of money to make those, so they're pretty nice. They're nicer than my edu-creation. Okay, so anyway, so this website has been designed for you to help support you at home with things that you have questions about. All right, so one last thing, one final note is that if you're like me, you're getting a barrage of stuff on Facebook. There's one thing right after another about about all the odd things with math. So y'all are seeing all this kinds of stuff too, I'm sure, about how these things are, how messed up Common Core is, and how it doesn't make any sense, the things that kids are doing. And all I'm asking is that you kind of think about the things that we talked about today, and just consider it when you're reading things about whether or not it really aligns. I know a common thing is that 3 plus 3 doesn't equal 6 anymore. It does. 3 plus 3 still equals 6. We're not telling kids anything different. It does equal 6. We do want them to know it. We want them to know it without having to count, without having to figure it out by the end of first grade, actually. We want them to know 3 plus 3. And we keep working on it until they do. So they need to know all of their facts, and that hasn't changed. One of the things that is also commonly appears on Facebook is one like this top one right here, where they show you this is the old way and how quick it is to get the answer, and this is the new way, and look at all these steps you had to take to get to the answer. Remember what I told you about we want kids to be flexible? Well, we're having them practice all kinds of strategies. And it's like everything else that kids practice. They don't do it efficiently at first. Like riding a bicycle, playing a piano, doing gymnastics, whatever it is that children do, or really adults do too if we did it, right? The things that we do at first, we're not perfect at. And we have to practice. And what we learn is to be more efficient as we go forward. So once children have learned the standard algorithm, then they would probably use that on that first one instead. Or they might even think about adding tens because they're so close, or because they both have a 2 in the ones place. And they wouldn't have to write all of that down. I was in a 2nd grade class earlier this week doing a math talk with a group of 2nd graders. And they were amazing at the math they were doing in their head. I mean, I wish I'd I'd almost videotaped it and then I didn't, and I wished I had afterwards. Because the way they're learning to think about numbers, they're able to do a lot of math in their head that a lot of adults would need pencil and paper to write down and do. So it is sloppy sometimes. You will see some of that. You'll be like, oh, they just did this the longest way ever. And that's okay. They're in the process. Our job as educators is we're trying to remember that flexibility. We're trying to move them to more efficient levels. And part of that is a slow process. Just like, remember that example with Kaylee too a little while ago, where it was a slower process to get Kaylee to understand place value than just telling her, leave the first blank empty. It's a slower process to build meaning, and sometimes that happens, sometimes they're going to go the long way. And one more thing that I was going to tell you about, a common myth with Facebook, but I've already forgotten it. So, oh, I know, the standard algorithms. Why don't kids do things the way we used to? We are still teaching the standard algorithms for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But we teach children to understand what addition means and what it means to combine numbers using place value and properties of operations first. And then we move to the algorithms. The U.S. standard algorithm for addition and subtraction are in 4th grade, and we do teach it in 4th grade. In 5th grade is the U.S. standard algorithm for multiplication, and in 6th grade is the U.S. standard algorithm for division. So they will be doing those. It's not that we never want them to see the standard algorithm or that we never want them to use it. In fact, a lot of kids still do. They'll still use it even in younger grades, but we're just trying to get them to understand the meaning of it if they use it in younger grades. So we'll ask them a lot of questions and talk to them about it a lot and ask them to explain it a lot in lower grades if they're using it.